Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of Black societal structure, not just in the United States or the Western world, but in Africa as well. And that societal structure and the concept, a very Western and rather Marxist concept of child support and alimony. Alimony is not really a major issue other than for Black sports stars and things like that, but child support is an issue. Now, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, approximately 75% of all Black children do not have a father in the household. Now, because Black women is using the United States as an example here, given it's got the most intensive and aggressive child support system, because Black women have multiple children by multiple partners, this mathematically at least means just shy of 90% of all Black children are living in a situation where there's no man or has never been a man, like a father in the household. So maybe other than occasional boyfriends coming or something like that. But so this is, I mean, if you want to sort of do a study on inner city ghetto type violence and drug dealing, then that'd be a place that would be handy to start, you'd think. But just having a look at this wider issue. Now, I remember, as a young guy, Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, standing up making speeches with this bevy of Black women standing behind him, looking very stern and with maximum solemnity and that sort of thing, saying, you don't pay your child support, we'll find you, we'll get you, we'll stick it up you, we'll make sure you fucking live up to your fucking responsibilities, you damn Nazis, and so on. So, and the message was that Black men just weren't, or men generally, but this particular speech I'm thinking of was pointed at Black men, and it was quite chilling. I mean, it's a speech that Merrick Garland could have made, talking about white supremacists or something like that. But it was this idea of you're willfully breaking the law. You're not honouring your obligations. You're a deadbeat. And we, the government, we're going to find you. We're going to get you. We're going to make you pay. Now, given the arbitrary nature of child support, given that any woman can go into any welfare office and say, look, I think, I'm not sure. I had so many boyfriends that time. I'm not sure. I think it was Billy Bob from down the way there that. But I don't know. But so what the welfare institutions started doing is saying, well, if you apply for welfare for yourself and any children, then if you've been married, then we want to go and chase your ex-husband for some money. And if it's any man you had a relationship with that you think may have resulted in procreation, then we'll go and chase him for child support. Now, the system was deeply flawed at the outset because the burden of proof that the woman was required to deliver was minimal, low. I mean, almost zero. She just had to say, all she has to say is, I think it was Billy Bob, and that's it. Now, because the sort of men that are involved in this generally tend to move around a lot, and maybe their addresses aren't really known. Maybe it was Billy Bob from New York, and there are 1,000 Billy Bobs. Or where in New York was it was in Harlem. Okay, well there are three Billy Bobs in Harlem. So we'll say it's this guy or that Billy Bob. Do you think that sounds like him? This guy was a floor sweeper or something. Yeah, I think he was. Yeah. So they'll send out the last known address for Billy Bob, which could be an address he lived at years ago. And then Billy Bob's got 30 days to dispute it. But when he goes to court, assuming he even gets the letter, which he probably doesn't because it's an old address, even if he gets the letter, Billy Bob's got to go to the court and have the matter heard And that could be a waiting list of 1 or 2 or even 3 years. So, but Billy Bob's got 30 days to do all the disputing and so on. So what really, Billy Bob's in a bit of a problem here, because the delay in having the case heard is long, but the demand that he pays money is immediate, like 30 days. The woman who's named Billy Bob doesn't have to provide evidence. The state is now all the costs, all the infrastructure, all the apparatus necessary to chase Billy Bob is now being completely funded by the state. So the woman who's applied for some sort of welfare, she gets that paid straight away. All she has to do is nominate Billy Bob, the name. All she'll just fill it out, and bingo, the cash machine starts. So she's got an incentive to put anyone's name down there. Hey, I don't care. So let's suppose Billy Bob does get the letter, or doesn't get the letter from the government, the demanding child support. Then as soon as, if he's in a job, they'll start to garnish his wages. That means the government will seize his wages. They'll say, well, this was like 2 years ago or 5 years ago, however long ago it was, Billy Bob. Well, that means you owe, $100,000 in back child support, plus penalties, plus fines, and so on. Now, Billy Bob looks at this, he goes, holy fuck. Again, even assuming he gets the letter, holy fuck, $100,000. There's no. Now, Billy Bob's not a big income earner. He's maybe a labourer, or he's doing, working in the takeout food store, or he's got a job in the local warehouse or something like that. So he looks at that and looks at the amount of child support they're going to take, because they're allowed to take a lot more if he's in arrears. So they can arbitrarily say, okay, you owe money from years ago, so we now can take quite a large portion of your income. So Billy Bob looks at this and he said, well, if they take that amount of money, I can't pay my rent, I can't run my motor vehicle, I can't get to work, I can't function, I can't. So he tries to explain this to the child support people, and then, well, hey, we don't give a fuck, Billy Bob. You're behind, you're in arrears. That makes you a fucking damn Nazi. And once we say you're a Nazi, you have no legal rights. So don't give us your belly aching here. You've left this child, you've abandoned this child, you fucking Nazi. So Billy Bob's now, he's a pariah. He has no legal right. There is no court he can go to. There is no lawyer who will take his case. He's outcast. So he's got the option of paying this arrears, which he may or may not owe. He may say, look, I've never heard of a lady called Billie Jean from so-and-so. I don't know anything about this. Don't care. She said you do. Because the burden of proof is so low, just her allegation is enough to make the case for the government to pursue. They don't really care whether it's true or not. This is now ideology that's at play. Facts don't matter. DNA testing. That's it. No. This is now ideology. We're going to get this damn oppressor, evil male. And the reason there's problem in the black community is because black men having casual sex with women and not honouring their paternal obligations. That's the problem. We fixed that. Everything is fixed. So, and the ideology is now running rampant. So Billy Bob looks at it and says, there's no point in me working. I can't, there won't be enough money left for me to live, even a frugal, meager existence. There won't be enough money. And it'll be 10 years plus before I can pay off this back debt. And then I've got another, 10 plus years of paying child support, which will impoverish me. So there's just no point in me working. So that my cousin Billy Jack, he's the drug dealer down at Sun. So he said he'll give me a job anytime dealing drugs. I get paid cash. I mean, I don't want to break the law. I don't want to get in that sort of thing. I don't want to be involved in that. But I got no choice, says Billy Bob. So he goes and becomes a drug dealer on the street, because really, in the practical reality of the world, that's his only option. No, it's not his only option. He's a fucking damn Nazi for not paying it. He's a deadbeat. He should just pay it. But what if he's starving to death and he's on the street, on a park bench, That's all. There's so little money left, and that's what it doesn't matter. He's a fucking dick. So the ideology just goes, just runs rampant here. Now, if we look at the amount of both partners, but women too, who have unprotected sex, and where it's not unusual to have a black woman at 26, 27 years old who's got 5 children. The societal issues around this 12, 13-year-old girls, procreating and conceiving and going to birth. These sorts of things, they're not issues to be swept under the carpet or pretend they're not happening. They're issues that are there, and we either say, well, that's sort of the black society. That's how it is. We accept that they're a separate society with separate norms, or try to change the behaviour. Now, remember, a lot of these people have been in America around white people for hundreds of years, and the behaviour is still very consistent with the behaviour of black African tribes. They're not really any different. So this idea of the monogamous mum-dad family is not natural anywhere in Africa. It's not how things are. It's never been that way. So this idea that that's the norm that black people should adhere to is in itself rather fanciful. And in pretty much all, maybe not absolutely all, but in most black communities, and brown ones too, the line of succession is through the woman, not through the man, because it's accepted that women will have multiple children with multiple different male partners. This is considered, in the jungle type scheme of things, this is considered a good spread of genetics, so that you don't have one lot of genes in your offspring. You have a spread of genes. So in the case of plagues and sicknesses and that sort of thing, there'll be different probabilities of survival. So there are reasons for it, going back over the many centuries or thousands of years. So this is something to be not to be dismissed as some absolute silly nonsense. The other thing is that in black societies, this idea of the mum, dad in the household or the tribe, the many children are brought up by the tribe, and in places like Africa where mortality's, the mortality rate's very high, then if you were relying solely on the mum, dad family to care for the children, the children will be rather exposed. So that's tend to be not the parents aren't involved, but it tends to be a situation where the wider spread of relatives, or indeed the tribe, as in the village where everyone stays put, everyone knows everybody and has for gazillions of years, that they bring up the children as a tribal member rather than a family member. So that there's those considerations as well. But now we transpose that to the West, and in Western society where this child support thing is cherished. I mean, feminists and radical, the more radical they are, the more they go into an absolute swoon over this idea of child support. Make him pay. And women have been oppressed for centuries. Make him pay, the damn fucking Nazi. So this is something that's been hijacked by not the radical feminists on their own. I mean, there's the economic spin doctor type folks who've got in there and thought, hey, this is great. We pay welfare, and then we steal the welfare from some guy. Now, the downfalls in the system, and I've known men who are white men who are they've been married 3 times, and they're hardworking, intelligent, bright, go-ahead sort of people, but they haven't picked their partners very well. They've made the mistake of getting some stony broke woman who is really struggling through life and thinking, I'll marry her. She'll really appreciate what I'm going to do for her. Give her a stable household and give her a stable life and a regular income and so on like that. But those women, whilst they like the idea of, hey, I'm getting all this money, that they strangely come to resent it. You're oppressing me by giving me all this money. And then the government says, all right, well, you now have to give her a free house and a free car, and you have to pay her child support and alimony for years. Well, you're making good money. Why not? So I know white men who've just dropped out of the workforce and become, worked in the underground economy or exist in the underground economy, or they've gone to live in a, little sort of apartment type thing in the backyard of their parents' place, and just work in the underground economy, because the child support they have to pay with the alimony, in the case if it's white guys, is often alimony as well. They look at it, so it's not worth my while working. And when you look, even if you have one child, I mean, just to look at the child support thing for those who don't know, and you have just one child, typically your tax rate, your marginal tax rate, will be over 70%. And if you have 3 children, your marginal tax rate will be 86%. And so it gives you an idea. Now, in black communities, it's sort of double, because the woman either doesn't work. I mean, she's got that many children, she probably wouldn't, like 5 or 6 or something, either doesn't work, or she works at a job that has such low pay that it's effectively, makes no difference to child support that's owed, because it comes under any sort of triggering thresholds. So now the child support sort of system could be reformed in the sense that it needs to make sure they're getting the right person, because in many of these instances, the woman just gives any name she can think of. Remember, she's come for welfare, so she needs the money for whatever the reason. She needs the money. And they say, no welfare unless you give us a name. A name. You have to give us a name, or no welfare. She says, holy fuck, Billy Bob. Billy Bob, right, done. And then she gets the money. So she's under a lot of pressure. And some of these people are very simple-minded folks. The idea where they can think ahead to the possible ramifications of what they're doing. They don't care. They said no money unless I give a name. So I'll give you a fucking name. So they get the name, and then the machinery sort of clicks into place. But she's got her money. But she has to sign a form and then say, I declare this is correct, and all this sort of thing, under alleged penalty of perjury. I'm not aware of any woman ever who's been convicted, certainly not in Australia, of perjury by falsely claiming that someone named Billy Bob is the biological father of the child or children. Maybe it's happened, but I'm unaware of it, nor do I know anyone who knows of any case of it. So perjury is not punishable here, and nor does the government care. Again, the burden of proof is so low as to be irrelevant. But the burden of proof is reversed. Once that form is signed, she says it's Billy Bob, then Billy Bob no longer has the assumption of innocence. And the technical argument is, well, it's not a criminal case. It's not absolutely criminal. We're not saying Billy Bob murdered somebody. We're just saying he owes money. Now, but once it's worked through the system, the penalties that Billy Bob suffers are the same as if it were a criminal case, as if he had committed murder. In fact, there are murderers that get out with less jail time than people who are in arrears on their child support. So go figure that if you can. So now the child support machinery is kicked off, and so Billy Bob must prove his innocence. He has to prove he is not the biological parent of the child or children. Now, that's the amount of obstacles put in the way of any man trying to navigate through that, be they black or white. The obstacles are numerous. Very long wait times, 2-3 years before the case can be heard. And in that time, he has to pay. It's not that he doesn't have to pay while he's sort of appealing it, if you like. He has to pay throughout all that time. And if he wins, if he does somehow manages to prove that he's not, it has to be 100%, absolutely 100% conclusive hard evidence, then he can't get that money back. That money's gone now forever. He's not going to see a penny of that. So and he's got to pay all the legal fees himself, while she's getting completely free legal aid throughout. It doesn't cost her a penny to run the case. So now in Australia and some other jurisdictions too, the woman has to agree in writing that a DNA test is allowed. And this is under some spurious notion of a DNA test is going to hurt the child or something like. They've got some nonsense like that they invent that's all very vague, and and fuzzy. So then, so the man applies to say, well, I've never seen that woman before, and I know nothing about any children, and if I can get a DNA test, that'll prove it. Now, remember the courts, the system saying you are the biological parent. That it's not even a matter for that you are, and you must prove you're not. And the only means to conclusively prove you're not is a DNA test. But we're not going to let you do a DNA test. Oh, well, that means you can't prove you're not then, because the burden of proof's been reversed. You can't prove you're not, so you have to keep on paying. Let's suppose the woman is pretty convinced that it is Billy Bob. And this can be for a number of reasons. Maybe Billy Bob's got a steady job, so she's going to get more money out of Billy Bob than she will in any of the other guys who are unemployed, and so she goes after Billy. So she says, yep, it's I'll agree to DNA test, in her own mind, believing that it must be Billy Bob. The DNA test comes back and it's 99.83% that Billy Bob is not the biological parent. Now, there are courts that say, well, 99.83, that's still a 1 in 1,000 chance you might be. So I'm not prepared, Billy Bob, to let you off on the child support. We'll have to do another DNA test. So you'll have to apply to the court again for another. And so if there's another DNA test comes back with that same, then we'll let you off. So Billy Bob thinks, well, that's a bit weird. All right then. Well, if that's what it takes. Oh, Billy Bob, it's another 2-year waiting list for you to now have that case heard, and you have to pay child support throughout those 2 years, and you won't get a penny back if you win. Let's suppose it comes back at 99.99 or something, and judge, oh, well, you're not the biological parent. Then Billy Bob's off the hook. And then some strange things have happened in courts. There's one case that I came across where the judge said, okay, well, you're not the biological parent. So you don't know this woman, or maybe you did, but you're not the procreating sort of partner. But have you, Billy Bob, have you heard of something called social fatherhood? Huh? What's that? Well, Billy Bob, you've got a good income, and Billie Jean there, she's unemployed. She's got 10 children, and like she hasn't got those children are doing it tough. You've got a good job. Why don't you just give her money anyway? Well, why should I, says Billy Bob. Well, social fatherhood. This is where you want to help her. You want to help those kids and or that kid or whatever. You've got a good income. You're not married. You've got no commitment. Why don't you give something? Why don't you? I'm not. If you don't do this, Billy Bob, I'm a little bit. I'll be unimpressed with you. And now Billy Bob's looking and going, holy crap, what's going on here? Am I going to get into trouble? I mean, will they use this to put me in prison? So the inference is not expressed directly. The inference is, we may hurt you if you don't do what we tell you or what we want you to do. That's sort of the inference there. Now, if Billy Bob was more aware of his legal rights, and if he could afford a lawyer or afford a decent lawyer that represents him and not the state, then he could tell the judge, well, thank you, Your Honour. I really appreciate your advice, but I'm not legally required to, and that's my position, and thank you for, and then that would be the end of it. But they even have a go at trying to shake him down purely on the basis that he's got a good job or a regular job. Fuck. It shows again the ideology of not all the people working in it, including the judges. So this is the situation with the black diaspora in the United States or elsewhere in the West. They're because their societal structure is such, or norms is such, that one woman will have many sexual partners, intimate partners with unprotected unprotected sex. Then there's much higher chance that one woman will have multiple children by multiple partners and will choose to take, have the birth rather than have an abortion. So the child support issue is one where 90% of black men are on the hook for child support, and the arrears and the fines and the debts and the so on mount fairly quickly. So they have to be itinerant men. That they have to. They can't live in sort of one address, a fixed address, otherwise they'll be found. So they have to move from couch to couch in different places and have to work in the underground economy. Otherwise, if they get a steady job anywhere, that they'll have nothing left. There'll be so much money taken out of their pay packet that they won't have enough left to buy a bus ticket to the Bronx. And so they okay, well, that's the reality of my situation. I'll just work. So really, child support is given unless they can change black behaviour with a flicking of a switch. But if they can't do that, if that can't be done, and it can't, then the whole child support thing needs to be rethought. Even if they brought in rigorous DNA testing at the outset and really made an effort to make sure it was the right guy. Because another big problem in the black diaspora is how do I know that I'm the guy on the hook for this? I know she was seeing half a dozen other guys at the time, so why should it be me? I mean, how do they know it's me if there's no DNA test? So some of these, or many of these black men have quite a legitimate concern about, indeed, the legitimacy of the process itself. And so the first thing that could be done is to restore legitimacy to the process, and then to work through it and say, look, is how much do we have to write off here? What can we do to solve the problem? And is it solvable given the black societal structure, or do we need to find other more imaginative ways of doing it? But this idea, we're going to get you, we're going to stick it up you, that's clearly not working. In fact, I would argue it's making the problem worse and making it harder for the black community to find solutions and workable, practical solutions. I mean, not ideological nonsense. And that's something that we need to, I think all of us need to put some time into addressing. You've been fantastic today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.